Hi, welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a random video. Actually, I recorded a version of this video a few minutes ago, and I was talking animatedly in front of my camera without realizing that apparently my phone had a space issue. It just stopped recording without telling me. Like, there wasn't even a notification or anything. It just stopped recording. And then I realized that I have actually been talking in front of a camera for nothing. At least for a few minutes before I realized that the camera has stopped recording. And I was like, I was actually I was unhappy about that, and at the same time I was also feeling slightly embarrassed because, you know, I suppose you would understand how that feels if you are a booktuber as well, or a YouTuber. That feeling of actually saying something in front of a camera, or doing something thinking that it will be worthwhile, and turns out it was all for nothing. It was just futile. And that was how I felt a few minutes ago. But then I realized that I could just delete some things, and so now I'm here. I have purged some things from my phone, and still fresh from the purging mood. I return with a vengeance with this video where I'll be talking about, I don't know, random things, I suppose. I'll probably talk about this book because I just finished reading this book, and I wanted to say something about it because, I have a booktube channel. So that means that, I now have an outlet to ramble about things. And today I'm in the mood of rambling about this book because today has been a mentally taxing day. I don't want to talk more about that, but instead I just want to focus about this book. This is The Memory Police by Yōko Ogawa, translated from the Japanese into the English by Snyder. One thing that I realized is that while I was reading this book, and as some of you might know, I have this habit of sort of sharing my reading updates on Instagram or on BookTube. No, not BookTube. But I just found out that I have the community tab, so I might be able to do that. I might be able to share my reading updates on BookTube. You guys are going to be spammed like hell. Anyway, I also like to update my reading on Goodreads, and then I found out that I would get a lot of responses, or at least more responses compared to other book updates that I post on social media, which doesn't surprise me, to be honest, because this book is fairly popular. But it's just something new. Like, I don't usually get that many likes. When I saw it, I gushed. So it was a fresh experience for me. Anyway, I suppose, because I don't really know what this video is going to be about, I just thought about it last minute that I wanted to talk about this book. Maybe I could have, the thumbnail of this video featuring me holding this book, so maybe that will attract people's attention. They'll be like, oh my gosh, there is a thumbnail featuring The Memory Police, and I just want to watch that video. Or maybe not. I'm just trying to be clickbaity. I wonder if my clickbaiting tactic works, because if you're hearing this, that it probably worked. But am I clickbaiting? Well, I don't know. Maybe not, because I'm going to talk about this book, right? Oh, so many questions. Anyway, let's talk about this book. But before that, talking about the thumbnail, I might have the thumbnail with me holding this book, with me posing in certain ways, like maybe this, like this, with a certain expression, or I'll do a different expression. How about that? I don't know. I'll choose it later, or maybe I'll do a different pose. I'll probably try. Let's try the standard, very popular YouTube thumbnail pose, the one that I find really interesting, but just don't feel ballsy enough to emulate, and that's the this pose. They are usually accompanied with certain expressions, like this. Oh no. I usually call it the overwhelmed pose, but honestly, I don't think that it would fit this book because I felt underwhelmed reading this book. But this book is also very difficult for me to describe, or rather, it's quite difficult for me to describe how I felt about this book. I have so much mixed feelings about this book. I honestly do not know what to say. So this video is probably going to be like a jumble of words, because, okay, this book was something that I just felt like I didn't really have much emotional connection with. I wasn't really engrossed in reading this book. I wasn't really emotionally invested with the characters, with the things that are happening in this book. I was just like reading reading through the pages without feeling much of a stuff. So basically what happens in here is that we have this novelist who lives on an island, presumably in Japan, and apparently on this island things are disappearing periodically. We're talking about random things, random objects like perfumes, hats, flowers, fruits, and even stuff like birds. Those things are disappearing, and the party that is orchestrating these disappearing activities is this group called the Memory Police. And apparently when these things disappear, most of the inhabitants on that island would forget about the existence of those things. So if they were to be confronted with that thing, those things again, they would have no recollection of what those things were, what their functions were, what their names were. They wouldn't know anything about those things, including the novelist. The novelist also experiences this. And to the novelist, it's all just fine because that's literally her existence. Like she does not have those the ability to remember about the past history of those things before they are disappeared by the Memory Police. However, there are a bunch of people, a minority of inhabitants who are able to remember the things that have been disappeared. And these people are sort of being hunted down and arrested and caught, taken somewhere by the Memory Police. And one of those people is the editor of this novelist. And because of this, the novelist has this intense desire to protect her editor. And so she decides to hide her editor so that her editor is safe from the Memory Police. And so the story takes off from there, and we see what will happen to the novelist and also the editor. This novel is marketed as some kind of a dystopian fiction, although to be honest, I just don't really feel that is so much of a dystopian novel. There is certainly some, there are certainly some layers of social commentary that you can extract from this book, especially when it comes to, at least from my point of view, this idea of making things disappear and making the general populace to forget about the things and its history and its existence sort of reminds me of this revisionism in history, or erasure of certain aspects in history, which is definitely something that is really important, because it also means silencing voices of certain people, of minority, especially in the past, in history. So it really just reminds me of that, and the inability of the people in the current time to know, to have the knowledge, to remember. Or of course sometimes they don't really have the privilege to remember because they did not live through the time. So because of the disappearances of these knowledge, people of the newer generation won't be able to know that those things used to exist, used to matter, used to be important. So that is sort of like the thing that I could extract from this book, the kinds of commentary that it makes. I'm pretty sure that this book also explores more social commentary. I'm pretty sure other readers also extract something different from this book as well. So I'm really curious to know what's your takeaway from this book, and share it in the comments if you want to. But yeah, I sort of felt two very contrasting feelings towards this book. So I'm going to talk about the first one first. This one I sort of mentioned earlier. While I was reading this book, and typically I read novels as stories because that's what they are for me. I was reading this book for pleasure. And to be honest, I didn't really enjoy this book in a traditional sense. Like, I wasn't really, I wouldn't consider this book to be a page turner. I wouldn't say that the story, the plot is like so gripping. I wasn't really engrossed in the characters. Like, the characters are just sort of existing, and I wasn't really connected with the characters. I didn't really care what was going to happen with the characters, because it just felt like there was this really large distance between me and the characters, and yeah, we were just not connected. And that was the sense that I was feeling in this book throughout this story. Even though there seems to be like this ominous force, the memory police, who are acting some sort of an antagonistic force in the plot of this book, I wasn't really feeling the stakes, because we don't really know what happened to the people who are taken by the memory police. We don't really know what really happened to the things that are being disappeared afterwards. I mean, we know how they are disappeared, but what happens afterwards, what goes on behind this shadowy organization, the memory police, we don't really know much. And it just makes this whole thing feels very vague. And while it sort of lends that air of mystery, and usually when you're confronted with the unknown, you will feel some, this sense of foreboding. You don't know what's going on beyond the facade of whatever you're seeing. With this book, it didn't have that effect. It didn't really feel like an unknown. It didn't feel like an intriguing unknown. It just felt like an unknown that I just couldn't care less to know more about. So yeah, that was my, one of my feelings about this book. In terms of what was going on in it, I didn't care so much. But at the same time, this book is also a very nice exploration on what is, what is the value of memory. Because somehow, I get this vibe that this book is suggesting that to us, memory is something that is not very, it is something that many people take for granted, right? And it's like, yeah, memory is something that you remember. What else? That's it, I guess. But this book also introduces this sense of, this ominous sense that what could possibly happen, or rather, what you could possibly feel when you start to realize that you're losing memory of certain things. As you know, because when you're losing memory, and honestly, this is like, on a personal level, I do feel these kinds of anxieties as well. Like, what would happen if I were to suddenly lose the memory, if I were to forget about things that I used to care about, and I wouldn't even realize that I'm losing the memory. I wouldn't even know that I actually forgot about that thing, because I forgot that it ever exists. I forgot that I ever had certain feelings towards it. What if I ever forgot about the hobbies that I used to love? For example, what if I forgot about, what if I forget about reading? What if I forget about words, letters, writing, and I forget about the fact that I used to enjoy them? It would feel sort of jarring to imagine. It would be somewhat scary, to be honest. What if you forget about the people that you're close with, your friends and family? It would be very strange. Again, it would be very jarring. This book sort of illustrates that by having the characters forgetting about just random trivial things, like perfumes, hats, for example. Maybe some people, like the hat maker, would have, would experience the biggest impact. But for the normal people, the fact that they forget about hats, okay, whatever, it's fine, right? But then eventually this book also shows how, and how the people start to forget about things that are increasingly more important. Obviously, no spoilers here, but it does feel like there is a there is some kind of escalation when it comes to things being disappeared in this book. So definitely something to look forward to. Like, this book is not flat all throughout. There is something escalating in this book. But yeah, this book sort of talks about that and kind of makes me think about, this whole memory thing. Now, obviously I wasn't really like in this navel-gazy mood after reading this book, so yeah, I'm not that philosophical. I'm just a regular person doing regular things. But yeah, it just, it does make me feel about stuff. So yeah, my feeling about this book was kind of complicated. I originally gave it 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, but then I changed my ratings to 4 out of 5 stars, even though I wouldn't say that I enjoyed this book so much, but I still felt like it was fairly thought-provoking. It got me thinking about stuff. It got me feeling about stuff. So it had that effect. And this is probably like one of those books that just made me feel something that is beyond this traditional enjoyment, sense of enjoyment when you're reading a book. I think last time I had something similar to this, but not exactly like this, was when I was reading Quarantine by Crace. I was like, oh my gosh, the main character of that book was horrible, like super horrible. Not gonna talk more about that book, but let me just tell you that if you are interested in reading that book, the main character of that book is just horrible, period. And when I finished that book, I was like, oh my gosh, I wanted to vomit. But then that book got you thinking, and then I sort of realized that I started to think about that book more, and then I sort of appreciated the different aspect of it, and I sort of changed my rating from 2 to 4 stars. So yeah, you can check that book out as well. Actually, I didn't realize that this video was going to be a fairly chatty video. I thought it was going to be like a half-hearted video or something. I mean, it's not something that I structured anyway, but I don't know. I'm sort of glad about how it turned out, and yeah, I guess that's it for this video, and I'll see you again in another one. I'm not sure when that is going to come out. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I think a few videos ago I mentioned something about my major life change, and well, you know, to be honest, it's not like that big of a deal. It's not like I'm gonna have a baby or something, or am I? But anyway, no, I'm not. Let's not talk about babies. My major life change is just me. I just resigned from my engineering job, and I am going to close that chapter of my life. I am sort of in this position to, not exactly in this position, I'm not sure if that's the right word to use. I'm in this situation in which I feel like I want to move on to something new. So I'm feeling quite excited. It might sound sort of vague or unclear to you, because that's exactly how it is. It's sort of vague and unclear to me as well. But I think maybe, you know, for me, I guess that's part of the excitement, I suppose. I sort of planned for this anyway. So yeah, I am fairly excited about that. So I'm not sure what's going to happen after this. So we'll just leave it at that. That's my major life change. Anticlimactic, isn't it? Anyway, I guess I'll see you in a different video. So until then, take care. Thanks for watching, and bye.